By the way, it says Moscow Morning Views. I should have said that, shouldn't I? Yet another edition of Moscow Morning Views. And we've got a show for you today that's, well, I guess if you're in the U of I area, community, student, faculty, administrator, it's something you all have heard about. And maybe you know about it, maybe you don't. It's this doggone university place. What should we call it? Fiasco or something like that. Anyway, we're going to talk all about that today. And scheduled to call in, I got a fellow that's written a book about it. And I say a fella because I don't know his name, and neither do you. But his name is, as far as for our purposes, it will be Deep Throat 2. That's what he calls himself. That's why he's written the book. And the book is entitled Boise's Watergate, University Place, and All the Governor's Men. It's got a cool drawing on the front of a big, great white shark coming up from the depths, threatening a little lifeboat with students on it, with the U of I flag and Idaho Education Funds written on the rubber life raft. So kind of interesting approach there, and it's published by Ex Libris, and that's just Ex Libris. And gee, I guess it came out in 2000, this year, I guess not too long ago, huh? And it's available here locally. I'm sure you could go down to our friendly independent bookstore downtown here in Moscow and find it, because gee whiz, they'd be that's something they kind of need to carry, isn't it? If it's an independent bookstore in a university town, and the university town is Moscow and the university is U of I, and if there's a book out with as much relevance, I guess you could say, to the financial well-being of the University of Idaho in the last few years, well, I would not, if there's one out there that has any more relevance than this one, well, I wouldn't be able to put my finger on it, would you? So anyway, this Deep Throat 2 character, he's calling right now. Let me see if I can't get him on the air. KUOI. Okay, let me try to get you on the air here. I'll flip it on. Hang on. Yes, hello, DT2.
Hello, this is Tim.
This is Tim. I got you on the air. Sometimes, as I said in my email, I've been known to make a few errors in judgment on my on-air transitions. So anyway, I wanted to make sure you listen, DTT. I want to first congratulate you. If you're a simple-minded fellow like me and you heard about University Place, well, you kind of read in the paper, oh, well, they spent all this money, didn't really get much for it, and gee whiz, the president had to resign because he maybe should have done something differently. But I never really, got a grasp of it. I didn't read the big Prince report. So I wanted to, first of all, congratulate you on putting everything in one package like this, because I think it's quite a good sort of a capsulization maybe of everything that's going on.
That's what other people have indicated, and I have had help, some of it directly through various local politicians here, representatives, Ada County commissioners, ex-commissioners, and as you know, if you've glanced through the book, I know you didn't have a lot of time to read it, but I also at some point had an anonymous source who was, I would say, pretty close to the perps, start communicating with me, and so I did put all of it together. It took about 2.5 years of record research down at the CCDC, which is Capital City Development Corporation, Urban Renewal, Boise's Urban Renewal Agency, and like you said, the Prince Report, which is about 600 pages, etc.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine the amount of work, because trying to get something like that Prince, I mean, you've got excerpts from the Prince Report in the book, but I can only imagine trying to get something like that into something that's readable for the average person, and then on top of that, all the research. I mean, it's kind of mind-boggling.
Like I said, it did take time, and one of the goals was to take it out of legalese and put it into hopefully some humorous and for the man in the street to read and understand what really happened.
Well, you definitely succeeded on the humorous humorous part of it. I want to congratulate you on that as well. It's and anybody out there who has not who is maybe considering reading the book and has not, well, I'm not going to tell you to go buy it, but I am going to tell you to not be afraid of it and not be afraid that you're going to be bored, because Mr. Deep Throat here has made it into quite a good read. Like you said, I read pretty much all of it. I can't say that I have a encyclopedic memory of it to ask you questions, but I think I've got the high points, and I really, again, I'm not trying to be overly congratulatory here or anything, but it really is. You did a really good job. Your sense of humor really comes through, and it's really it really makes it for a quick read. And I think because of that, a lot more people are going to be picking it up.
I hope so. I think that although, excuse me, the civil portion has been settled somewhat, part of it was secret. The latest that I know of is the federal criminal investigation portion is still going forward, and the last information I had is that U.S. Attorney Alan Garton out of the Portland District Office is called for a grand jury.
Oh, yeah.
So...
Well, I just to throw this out at you, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the news, and I could be... I was just drinking my first cup of coffee this morning when I saw this on the computer, but I could have sworn that I saw online today a Statesman column out of course, Boise, that said, not a column, actually a little report that said that the Latah County prosecutor had a strategy to actually get around, not really get around, but I guess kind of make inapplicable the deadline for the statute of limitations that's, I guess, coming up in about a week, correct?
Actually, I think there was an article in the Statesman a little while ago, too. Maybe they reissued part of it, but Latah prosecutor Bill Thompson has indicated that the June 30th fiscal ending year of 2006, which is 5 years from the date of 2001, which would be 5 years,
right,
would be statute of limitations. But he said there were still things going on, a lot of activity up through 2003, which is true. So there are at least two ways, and one of them is that it really doesn't end until 2008.
Right.
And the other part is that they can ask in special circumstances for an extension by the courts. I tend to think there is no statute of limitations up to the 2006 because a lot of things are still going on. And at any rate, this was mentioned in the Statesman, but also Garton indicated that he's really interested in continuing and finishing this up via a grand jury process. Now, there's a lot in the book, although it's not too long for people to read, 160-odd pages. Garton also has information, extra information from me that he may be going after in certain directions in order to go for the grand jury. So I get the impression that perhaps the Idaho people are more like they want to end it, and the U.S. Oregon person, Garton, would like to go through the grand jury process.
Yeah, I may have gotten on as far as the Idaho criminal part of it, I may have gotten my dates wrong, but I had thought that there was a date mentioned that was like the end of next week, and that the prosecutor had said that might not be, as you mentioned, hard and fast, and there wouldn't be a problem with continuing on, because, as you also mentioned, there's more work to be done. So I can imagine, a county prosecutor. I mean, we've had, there was a pretty big case, a while back with, and a lot of aftermath of this case with a murder case, which is a big deal for a small
Right.
county. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of money. I can imagine, and there's always the usual drug crimes and all sorts of other things going on. So I can imagine that the time and resources that the Latah County end of it is really just pretty much overwhelming. I would think, at least.
Well, the whole case, the entire case is actually extremely complicated.
Right.
There's so many parts, and I tried to summarize the major parts that tie in, and probably about halfway through, the book was being published on the website www.freemarketduck.com. I was contacted by various other individuals, ex-representative Bob Forey of CUNA, the former Ada County Commissioner Sharon Ullman, who were sending emails emphasizing that University Place wasn't just University Place, but rather it was tied into something that they had known about, which was the fake lease purchase of the 14 acres downtown where University Place, the water center, was built by an outside development company, Civic Partners from California,
Sure.
and that Ada County had unconstitutionally gone through this process with a tax-exempt corporation that involved with Supreme Court justices, judges, and lawyers in Idaho to purchase the property, and it was the same people that if you connect the dots, starts getting into the University Place fiasco. So
the Friends and the dummy corporation, or as you refer to it, was the Friends of the Ada County judicial system, right?
That's correct, and in fact they well, it's just for your listeners, basically what they did was they wanted a new courthouse, and they couldn't get the voters to spring for purchasing it, because you have to have a 2/3 majority according to the Constitutional Article 8, Section 3, to approve multi-year deficits. So what they did was they formed a non-profit tax-exempt corporation, received money from the Ada County treasurer, called it rent. Then they went out and bought it from Union Pacific Railroad and leased it back on a yearly basis to the Ada County commissioners. After 4 years and $4 million, they sold it to them for $1. Now, that's clearly an end run to get around the Constitution. So that's what they did, because they wanted the building. However, the way it ties into University Place is the same people. It's the same acreage. It's the same perps who did it. And in fact, part of the reason that this led in the University Place is because this is how part of the perps, I call them cryptic partners, as you know in the book,
right.
They obtained money to pay their back legal fees to the Boise lawyers mentioned in the book, so that then the Boise lawyers could then say, hey, we got a bigger deal for you. We got a better, juicier deal for you. It's called University Place. Listen to what we have to offer you. And zoom, that took off. So connecting the dots, and that's the only reason it got included in the book. For a long time, because I received a lot of email from people complaining about this and that and on and on. And there was, often no connection. But this was connected. And not only that, but Forey, ex-representative Forey, and another gentleman sued them in court, and the court was going in their direction, saying this is unconstitutional, when the Supreme Court justice swapped out the judges and turned it the other way, dismissed the case, and in fact threatened Jim Old and Representative Forey to pay the Friends of the Ada County Judicial System's legal fee, I think it was $250,000, unless they signed that they wouldn't appeal. Because I think that had they appealed it up through out of the past Idaho, even, because it wasn't going to get approved by the Idaho Supreme Court since they were backing it.
Right.
But if it then got into the federal level, the Ninth Circuit, I think, they would have thrown it out and said, "Are you kidding me? This is this methodology," which in fact is being used all over Idaho right now as we speak, because no one has been prosecuted for this methodology.
So basically, the way I understand it, you're talking about State Representative Bob Forey, right? And
Yes.
and one of the property owners groups, I guess a sort of a watchdog group for property taxes is the way I took it. Jim All, the chairman of that in Ada County, and I guess Forey's from out of Nampa. Is that correct?
Yeah, Nampa-Kuna area.
Okay. So what? I guess one of their big concerns is too, as it would be for anybody. They were going to possibly get stuck with these legal fees, correct? And
Yeah.
and
So they signed off and didn't appeal.
yeah, I mean, and when you think about it, I mean, you can't blame them. I mean, anybody who's going to be liable for, the average person who says, "Gee whiz, here I am, I'm going to get stuck with the bill for $250,000." I mean, you've got
you lose the farm.
pretty big incentive.
And look who you're fighting. You're fighting a whole powerful group, even all the way up to the Supreme Court, a couple of Supreme Court justices in Idaho. Are you going to win? I mean, the big question is, when things like this happen, you usually want to turn to the judicial system. But as we can see in this case, the judicial system was the prime mover in a lot of this. And so, who do you turn to? Who do you go to?
So this Ada County Courthouse project started out with civic partners being involved. Civic partners out of somewhere in California and
Newport Beach.
Yeah, Newport Beach, and also understand somewhat of an undercapitalized.
You're polite. That's a polite way to put it.
Okay.
They couldn't get financing on their own. Actually, the CCDC, Boise Urban Renewal Agency, put bids out to build the Ada County Courthouse after they pulled off this property thing. And so they, I call them cryptic partners because they kept changing their names from Wilmore Holdings to Civic Partners West, Civic Partners LLC, Idaho, et cetera, There's about 4 of them. But they're civic partners. I call them cryptic partners. They won the proposal when they joined with Fluor, which is a huge multinational building group, and they won the bid. Of course, it was stacked. The book goes into that. It was chosen by a committee, 11-member committee, the chairman of which is Judy P. Deere, a longtime Ada County commissioner. She wasn't at the time, but she had been before, and she just lost in a primary. Chose them, and at the same time received contributions to her political campaigns from Wilmore Holdings. And then after they won the bid, mysteriously, Fluor dropped out.
So the whole approval of the bid was based on the fact that Fluor really did have the bucks behind them. Exactly.
Yes, they did. They had the bucks behind them. I researched it thoroughly. All the RFP, the request for proposal, showed nothing from cryptic partners, but Fluor had it all. They international oil companies, et cetera, power plants, and then they dropped out, and the CCDC. For some unknown reason, and this was also mentioned in the Prince report, by the way, too, didn't say, let's go to the second place bidder because they don't qualify. Instead, they not only let them continue without Fluor, but they granted them exclusive development rights. Now, one has to the 14 acres in downtown Boise, and on which the courthouse was finally built by Morrison Knudsen, who didn't participate in the bidding process at all, so that's another mystery.
Right.
And later the water center, the only building built, was built at the end on that property. In the middle was built through Fannie Mae subsidization, a low-rent projects apartment called Civic Plaza. That figures into this whole mess, too. But so Cryptic Partners got in on it in the beginning, and the people who sold them the property, who had exclusive selling rights, was the lawyers, Igurin and the boys at Gibbons Pursley.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it all ties in. It all just flows through.
But so in other words, the point there is that, I mean, one of the major points there is, had the proper regulations been followed, as soon as Floor was no longer in the picture, Civic Partners should not ever have been even considered for this.
Exactly, and University Place would have never happened because, as one of my sources indicated, they needed Gibbons-Pursley needed the back payments. It was up to like $500,000 before they would turn them on to the University Place project, so it wouldn't have gone. It would have never happened.
Right.
So the U of I and the UIF and everybody would have saved themselves a lot of time and aggravation, and I know the students there have, had their rates hiked, and a lot of expenditures had to be cut, and there were a lot of ramifications. So that's why I added this connection.
Right.
Also, I started receiving information from the anonymous source who, it was kind of a joke at first, called him or herself Deepest Throat. That's because I had switched from Deep Throat because, ironically, in Santa Rosa, the original Deep Throat in Washington, D.C., way back when, came out of the closet and said, "Hi, I'm Deep Throat. I'm in Santa Rosa, but I was born, I grew up in Twin Falls, et cetera, Idaho." So I switched it to Deep Throat, too, just kind of for a joke. It was online, the initial chapters. And then I started getting emails from a Deepest Throat. Well, at first I thought, oh no, another crackpot, right? And then I started checking on it, and the person started telling me various things, promising not to reveal the source or how he was communicating. I would double check, and I would, contact other people and say, did so-and-so go to Orange County, to this meeting, yada, yada, yada. And they would say, yeah, so-and-so had, dark glasses, and so-and-so was a treasurer, or et cetera, and it dovetailed. And so pretty soon I started saying, this person's not a crackpot. And they started giving me all kinds of details, even most of which are not in the book, because some of it's personal, and isn't applicable. But then I started trusting it. So then, only if I verified it from another source would I put it in the book. But there's a lot more that's not in the book because I can't verify it because nobody else knows, except this. But it's never been wrong. And so some of this information was turned over to, like I say, U.S. Attorney Garton, so he could pursue, let's say, other individuals and sources who do know a lot and have not come out in the paper, have never been revealed anywhere that I've ever seen. And I think this is part of what Garton is going for, is he's been given some hints and pointed in the right direction for people who do know. And if you notice in the civil agreement that happened, everybody was exonerated. All the lawyers, Hoover, Wallace, you name it, were exonerated except CEO Symingson and Civic Partners. Now, the way I view that is the Idaho boys are throwing them to the wolves. And so if Garton pressures some of those people, because this could turn into a RICO act, I can explain that a little bit later, then why would you, as a member of Cryptic Partners, want to go to prison for the other guys? So maybe someone's going to sing like a canary. I don't know. Nobody knows. Grand juries are secret. Garton and the district office will not respond to anybody except to say it's an ongoing case. So we don't know, but that's where they are on that. So now back to the RICO case, possibly.
I want to butt in just for a second and mention that this is KUOI 89.3 FM, and you're listening to Moscow Morning Views. And up here at the station, we have 74 degrees, light winds out of the east. And on the line with us today on Moscow Morning Views is, I call him DT2. His real name is Deep Throat 2. Of course, that's not his real name either, but that's what we're working with. And he is the author of Boise's Watergate, University Place, and All the Governor's Men. It's a new book out by published by Ex Libris, and it's available here in Moscow, right downtown, at your favorite independent bookstore there. And if you read it, I think if you're at all curious about the whole university place thing, maybe you don't understand it, maybe you've never heard of it, or maybe you've heard a little bit about it and you'd like to kind of delve into some of the details. Well, I tell you what, Deep Throat here has done an excellent job, and I recommend it. And one of the things I wanted to throw out at you too, again, about the kind of maybe inform the readers, potential readers of your book too, about it, is one of the things I think you do really well in the book is, because of the fact that it's so complicated, it's an excellent thing that you've done, and that is to sort of give a recap and then give another, as you continue on, give another sort of a review recap, just so the reader's kind of on the same page as you. And I think it really helps the ultimate understanding of what actually went down here.
Yeah, that's good to hear. I figured that out after I was getting confused. So every 2 to 3 chapters, I ratchet up the summary of where are we in one, bulleted items to say, what happened right now till all the way to the end of Follow the Money.
Right.
So, I try to make it reader friendly because it is extremely complicated. In fact, I discovered that not one legislature of 105 had even read the Prince Report. Or
that was something that I noticed in your book, that I think you said, was it 2 months after the Prince Report had come out, no one that you contacted had read the Prince Report in the legislature, and 2 or 3 had sort of scanned or skimmed a summary.
Yeah, there was a summary, but nobody read. In fact, they all, essentially all of them voted for it, the ISBA bond.
Right.
The $136 million, they all tried to distance themselves from this. And, everybody tries to say, there was an economic downturn, so it was maybe mismanaged, but now we're going to straighten it out, which is really a pile of baloney. A huge crime was committed, as Garton is finding out, and personally, I'm not against a university, U of I in Boise. They just did it wrong, and in fact, when I found out what was really going on, they were just laundering money to themselves. One could almost claim they had no intention, or they didn't care. Or if you wanted to keep giving them money, yeah, they'll build it, but they're really lining their pockets.
Well, one of the
off the money.
One of the analogies you make, I guess you'd call it an analogy, is that you've got this. I think you use the term cookies, but I think the front of your book kind of makes it look better. You have all this, millions of dollars, and probably the overseer of all that cash is not really paying a lot of attention. So if you've got the right kind of folks swimming around in the waters, well, gee whiz, there's going to be a feeding frenzy, and it sounds that's exactly like that's exactly what went down here. So
that's what I would allege is that actually characterizes what was set up. It was set up to siphon the money out of the University of Idaho through the University of Idaho Foundation, kind of not much different than laundering money, the drug money or something by the mafia, into a group of lawyers who had obtained an outside developer who, was rather shady in the past, and currently and still is, to actually just obtain the money. So, what we really ended up with is not a real attempt to build an extension, but rather to overcharge, no contracts, sending out backdated non-conflict of interest letters. I mean, picture this. You have the same lawyers, the same people sitting on the Property Development Committee of the UI Foundation representing them while they're representing the developer. Cryptic partners. Now, how does that work? You write a null conflictual letter to yourself, and you backdate it by 6 months so you can bill both sides at the same time for an extra 6 months. And there were two backdated non-conflict of interest letters issued by Gibbons Pursley, one of the law firms. what you find out is that nobody else has read them. Nobody else approved them. It was like Roy Iguerin sending a letter to himself. What does he sit on one side of the table, cranks up the letter of non-conflict of interest from Givens Pursley, then runs to the other side of the table to receive it as the lawyer for the University of Idaho Foundation? How does that work?
And generally, I mean, basically the rule on that is, if you're going to do that, you've got to make a full and open disclosure to both parties. I mean, if you're going to wear both hats, and then have, you know, like an agreement by both parties after they're fully informed, and that is isn't that one of the bases of one of the suits that's been settled recently?
Yes, but further, as the Prince Report pointed out, the operative terms are not that you issued the letter, but that the recipient acknowledged and agreed to it.
Exactly.
Now, so if the recipients on both sides don't both agree to it, then just because you issued it doesn't make it so, doesn't make it non-conflict of interest. And the fact that it happened over and over is rather indicative of what was going on. And not only that, since there was no approval, then all of this interim finances, which was obtained about 4 different ways, was illegal. You can't self-deal to yourself. Wallace can't pull money as the VP of Finance from the U of I and give it to himself in a secret account as the treasurer of the University of Idaho Foundation. That's called self-dealing in any other state in the union. And then running it through the lawyers to civic partners, and then they pay themselves, and then they pay civic partners for that too, is, obviously conflict of interest. So not having... but the further thing that really shows that they knew they were doing it, they tried to cover it up. Now, what did they try to cover up? They knew that the temporary interim financing was not legal, and that's why they tried to, and then they did get it done. They passed IFBA bonding, $136 million, to get permanent funding to replace and cover up, and they said so. There were various people who said so, and they're mentioned in the book, to cover up the illegal interim financing so they could erase it off the book and it wouldn't show up in an audit at the end of the year. Now they admitted to this. So if that doesn't point to what they were really doing, then nothing does. So, and that's where it drags in Kemp Thorne and ex-Speaker Newcomb and other people, that they rammed it through in 7 days flat, which is remarkable, and signed it off to get the permanent money because they knew they had to cover up. Now, it didn't work. The legislature voted yes, but then Wayne Milliman at the Idaho State Building Authority said, no, Cryptic Partners doesn't qualify. Then we got into that big mess, and so the money, none of the money, or very little of the money, later they did some settling, very little of the money was allowed to refund the initial $21 million that the UIF had run into debt from the U of I.
Right.
So,
and the one of the big questions you bring up is the $21 million. I mean, of course, that's one of the basic issues. What exactly was all this $21 million? These bills, these operating costs, initial costs, whatever they call them whatever you mentioned, they call them in the book. Pre-development costs, that's the term.
Right.
And a lot of those millions were, they were kind of stuck in rat holes here and there, right?
Right. They went to the majority of it went to Cryptic Partners. Eventually, $1.6 million went to the 2 law firms, mostly Givens Pursley. And think about it. And there were no contracts. Now get this: there were no contracts. Which is what KPMG, who wrote 100 pages in the Prince Report, criticized them for. No contracts between anybody, not the law firms, not between Cryptic. There were verbal agreements. There were memoranda of understanding, which is not a contract. It's a very flaky, we think we might do this, blah, blah, until we do the written contract, but no written contracts are done.
That is one of the most amazing parts of
there's
it.
no contracts. And so, but get this, so now they're $21 million in debt. They discover from Wayne Milliman that they're not going to be reimbursed. any 4 million, 6 million, or any million. It's zero. They're going to be reimbursed zero. So what do? Now, this is very telling. They run out and they borrow another $6 million from the U of I Foundation endowment funds because Cryptic Partners needed to pay off a debt at Civic Plaza. So they're paying for the wrong thing anyway. They need it exactly equal, and the Prince Report brought this up. They needed another $6 million to pay off an equity position in their Civic Plaza apartments built right next to what was going to be University Place. Isn't that amazing? So they dreamed up after they knew they weren't going to get reimbursed and took more money. Now, why would somebody do that if they're not siphoning it off? And then that $6 million or $5.7 million was simply part of an $18 million additional quote reconciliation agreement, which means, hi, we're going to fire you, and the way we're going to fire you is to pay you $18 million. Oh boy, fire me tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I'd like to be fired. Right away.
Fire you and give you $18 million, and you can call it a reconciliation agreement. Now, who wrote that? The same lawyers, the Ed Millers, the Frank Lees, the Roy Igerin, all of Givens personally. So these guys wrote the reconciliation agreement, and they were the ones representing Cryptic Partners who had already gotten $21 million, and they represented simultaneously the UIF. Now, whose interests are they representing? It can't be either one. So how can they even write the reconciliation agreement? It's a joke.
It's astounding. I want to back up just for a second and ask
Sure.
a really basic question. And that is, there may be somebody out here that is just hearing this for the first time, and they're saying, oh, well, these guys are talking about all this financial and legal wheeling and dealing, but what the heck was University Place going to be in the first place? Did you get any kind of a good handle on was there a really hard and fast idea of what this whole complex was going to look like, be, and all that stuff?
Yeah, yes, and they even issued, Cryptic Partners issued a brochure that showed the research center, about 4 buildings, going to chop down to 3. There's going to be the water center, a research facility, and across the street they were going to build something else. And there was supposed to be a lot of shops and stuff from the courthouse that would support a lot of the cost, etc. Senator Craig got a rider passed through Congress in 30 days to house Forest Service in there. So there was going to, it was someone's wish list or dream, but someone's hallucinations does not constitute a project.
And the kind of reason I ask that is because of the comment apparently made by or that's attributed to former UI President Hoover, build those buildings as big and tall as possible, or what was the
right? Build them, when the format was build them as high and as tall as possible. Now, having had a lot of previous in business project management experience myself, that is not how one builds. And let me also point out that none of the other criteria was there to do a development of this size. There was no computerized accounting that tied in with critical path scheduling, the disciplines, the timelines, how much was spent, how much is left to be spent, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. None of that existed. And so one wonders how a so-called billion-dollar development company, Cryptic Partners, even qualified or could even, there was no way they were going to be able to do this.
Well, now, go ahead. I'm sorry. I'll ask this one.
Well, so one wonders, what were they really doing? I mean, they had Hoover who had no idea, and then, of course, there was a thing called Hoover time that said, hey, build it, faster.
Right.
It was actually going into deficit and default under, I guess he was trying to manage it. And once again, there was no central point project manager. One of the key things anybody in the biz knows, you have to have a project manager who's the central point, does change controls, scheduled design review meetings, et cetera, the whole litany, and that didn't exist. It didn't exist. Now, So it makes you wonder, what's Cryptic Partners doing, and what are the Boise lawyers doing?
Well, now,
are they just scheming, or are they just total incompetence, or are they crafty as a fox?
just out of morbid curiosity, when you have two different law firms, two different major law firms in Boise being paid pretty well, I would say, and
Right.
you have a major development company, you have a state university entering into a deal like this. Has there been any coherent response as to how it was possible that there was no contract drawn up for all this stuff?
No, that's one of the main criticisms by both KPMG and who did 100 pages in the Prince Report, and the Prince Report, Holland and Hart, people who did the Prince Report. There was no. I had no idea. As I said in the book, if the state legislature, who voted yes for this, had just simply said, "Hey, we don't know anything about building buildings, and you're asking for $136 million." What you do in that situation is you call in a pro, Arthur Anderson or somebody, KPMG, and say, "Hey, what do we need to assure that they're on the right track? Because we're about to vote. Just talk to us for one day." And they would have said, just like any, I've been in that position too, where they would say, first thing you say is, "Show me the project book." Now, when they can't show you the project book, which shows you the schedule, the contracts, the vendors, et cetera, when someone can't show you that, you do not want them doing a project for you. You
think not.
No, so in an 8-hour day, KPMG or somebody in the biz could have told the legislature, and could have told Kempthorne, could have told Rehberger and Newcomb and all these people, "Hey, these guys don't even have the basics down. They're not even, it's ridiculous." That leads you to believe that they wanted it that way, because they went ahead full speed, and had nobody said anything, had it not failed, had a reporter, had Waylon Winstead not leaked to a Moscow Pullman reporter what was going on, this thing would have continued, and the public would have been paying, I don't know, $150, $200 million on top of the $100 million the perps, did in their little deed for the courthouse, because it was connected.
Well, it
would have gone on and on. It would have gone on and on.
It's just mind-boggling. I mean, if I was going to, hire somebody and, spend a couple of grand to build a nice deck and a hot tub in my backyard, I'd want some kind of a little, simple contract at least. I mean, and here we're talking. Here we're talking about huge, tall and high as possible buildings in a state capital for a state university, and we don't have the most simple elemental requirement legal agreement on it. It's just nuts. It really is.
That's right. But if you look at the past of Civic Partners, you'll find that this is the way they have done business always, everywhere. As I indicated in the book, that I got an email one day from another representative in Iowa, Sioux City, who said, "Hey, somebody copied a chapter from your website, anonymously sent it to me, and your Cryptic Partners," said Representative Ron Nutt of Sioux City, who was a ex-mortgage broker, so he knows about building and financing. He said, "Your Cryptic Partner seems to be my Civic Partners here in Sioux City that is doing a $39 million hotel theater complex, and boy, is it screwed up. They are talking it to the taxpayers here like mad." I said, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm doing a public records request, and he overnighted to me 300 to 400 pages of Sioux City public records requests, which I delved through and then discovered the signatures of Civic Partners, Steve Simingson and the boys, and Givens Percy Law Firm, Ed Miller again, doing the same thing to the residents of Sioux City, the same type of, I'm going to call it mismanagement of projects down there or over there that they were doing here. And they didn't know about us, and we didn't know about them.
These guys are...
So we put it together and found, oh my God. Then I did further research and found, whoa, there's Modesto, Lake Elsinore in California, right now in San Leandro, Fremont, Civic Partners, there's in all these places. They tried in Omaha. They tried doing a thing and getting in on that $40 billion Florida Overland Express, which was canceled. On and on. So if you look back how these guys functioned, then the Boise lawyers said, oh my God, and my source indicated too, we've hit the jackpot. We found a group, the Boise lawyers are saying, we have found the group that we can really use, because they will just...
Cash cow.
Oh, just the cash cow. And the U of I was used as a cash cow. And remember, they were going to cover all this up and then transform the payments coming from the Idaho State Building Authority bonds, so nobody would have ever known, and they would have just walked away with tons of money. In fact, my source said this was the biggest jackpot the Civic Partners ever hit in their history, and they were just laughing, and personally, they were laughing at the people of Idaho for putting up with it, for doing it, and for letting them fleece them.
Well,
and so, I had a pretty good view of, from inside near the perps, what was going on, and everything I saw from, the Prince report, bingo. As soon as I saw there was no contract, I thought, uh-oh, that's the tip-off right there. No signed contract, open-ended. Hey, they're just going to milk it. And they did. And look at the civil agreement. Look what happened in the secret civil agreement. Everybody was exonerated. We got Iger and Kempthorne and Hoover, Rehberger, Newcomb, everybody except Civic Partners. And a lot of it was paid by insurance companies or the Idaho State Insurance Fund of some sort,
right,
et cetera, et cetera. And in one case, the Idaho State University, using taxpayer money, paid off some property that the U of I had and got money from the U of I. So all it was one public education institution paying off in taxes with public money another public education institution. Now that, what kind of creative accounting is that?
Exactly. You're listening to Moscow Morning Views on KUOI 89.3 FM in Moscow. And on the line with us is Deep Throat 2. He's the author of Boise's Watergate, University Place, and All the Governor's Men. And that is just recently been published by Ex Libris. And your website, if anybody wanted to check that out, is freemarketduck.com.
That's correct.
Okay, freemarketduck, all one word.com. And you can find out info on the book there. And you can buy this book here locally at your friendly independent bookstore in downtown Moscow. I'm pretty doggone sure if they don't have it in stock. I know they have had it in stock, but if they don't, I'm sure they will get it for you. So I wanted to just reiterate, if you're just tuning in, that if you need a way to understand this university place and you don't really have the time or the ability to sort through about 600 pages of legalese in the Prince report, well, this might be a good way to go. So Deep Throat 2 is on the line with us, the author, and it just seems like with this whole situation with the U of I and the U of I Foundation, I just have a real basic question. What happened, or where was the University of Idaho's in-house counsel?
Georgia Wan?
Where was she during? I mean, where was?
She was left out.
They just kind of went around her back, huh?
Yes, in fact, she got her little hand slapped when she popped up and said, "Hey, I mistakenly received this billing, and first of all, it's not at university rates, which should be a discount, and second of all, I didn't even know about it, and I'm the lawyer here representing the U of I."
Oh man!
And so, she was essentially told to shut up, essentially, and they went around her and did what, like I said, it was...
Hey, we're going to do this, but don't tell Ms. Wan, Yuan, or whatever they know.
Yeah. That's about it. The word was out that, she was not in on the loop, and there were big arguments between her and I believe Wallace, and the upshot is that she was just, told to stay out of it, because the lawyers who are alumni of U of I, which is, that's, pretty bad, were just dealing with themselves. They were writing to themselves. I don't know why they bothered, but because, and they freely admitted, and it's in the Prince report, I think it's quoted in the book too, of how she was circumvented in all this. So once again,
so she tried to do her job.
Mismanagement. It was purposeful.
So in other words, she was ready and willing and able to do her job, but she wasn't allowed to, basically, by her own.
There were a lot. I think that happened a lot. In fact, anybody who questioned it were told, you're either for us or against us. If if you're not for us, then you're not a regular vandal or whatever.
Right. So in other words, the way it happened here in the Moscow end of all this, Hoover kind of thought this was a good idea. Jerry Wallace was his main man on this, and then he wanted to not be too much of a detailed guy, so he got was it Catherine Grindy?
Catherine Grind. Yeah.
Grind. How do you pronounce it? Okay. And he got her to sort of be the sub-point man on the whole thing. Is that how it kind of worked here?
She was characterized as the project manager, but then, and we've seen this in business all the time. Who's the real project manager? Will the real project manager stand up if you have 5 people giving directions?
Right.
Who is the real project manager?
Right.
So it was kind of I realized that. Now, I wouldn't say that Hoover and Kemp Thorne and some of those people were out to get money. They weren't raking in the money like the lawyers and Cryptic Partners, but they facilitated this facade. And at some point, they had to know what was going on. I think what happened is they just all thought they would get away with it. And then nobody would question it. They had been successful on a smaller scale somewhere else. I think it was also called University Press somewhere else in Idaho. But this really got away from them, nor were they dealing with Cryptic Partners and the same Boise lawyers. So I think it got away from those guys, but they didn't do anything to stop it. They essentially got caught. I think Kemp Thorne got caught up in it for various political reasons. He wasn't making a fortune off of this. It was strictly, I think, for political reasons. But
Right.
At some point, and when his chief of staff was sitting on multiple agencies like ISDA, CCDC, and chief of staff, and saying yes, and do this, do that, and not following the rules. Now, the lawyer should have known the rules, and so should, Kemp Thorne and those guys. You don't just do it any old way you want,
Exactly.
Fair money.
Well,
if they'd done it correctly, maybe it would have worked. I don't know. But
I've talked to some people, and about their opinion of Hoover's involvement in this, and they kind of go along with what you're saying there. That he thought it was a good idea. The whole extension down there, the University Place project at first, and he was kind of a big picture, big idea guy, and once he got into it, and it wasn't any kind of a malevolence or personal enrichment motive, but once he got into it, he realized pretty quickly he was in pretty deep, and he did a few things that maybe he oughtn't have, and that's kind of what
although he did receive, I forget, I'd have to look it up. He did receive privately several $100,000 that Roy Eichern, got for him in extra from his pay to get into this type of thing. I mean, there were, while he wasn't in, I don't think after the huge big bucks, he did get some big bucks, and also it was a power thing. Like the people at Enron, in fact, Wayman Winstead said, this is actually a real estate scheme that is about to implode our finances like Enron. Well, Lay and all those guys, yeah, they were in for the money too, but they also in for the power of being the big cheeto on the block. So expanding the U of I 2 blocks away from VSU, and when you stop and think about the Board of Education, is why would you extend money in that direction? If education is the object of the state, you could have done the same thing right there with buildings and maybe extended the SU. Now, I know there's a rivalry, and I know they are not a land-grant extension university, et cetera, but somehow I think it was a competition and a power play between, look at all the people, they were all alumni and ex-student body presidents of the U of I. And so, you know, the center of Idaho maybe they thought was moving toward Boise, and so they wanted to encroach right down there.
Right.
But it was getting rather redundant to do something that perhaps the BSU could have done, and I know there's a big rivalry there, but when I'm thinking about taxpayer money and
exactly, yeah.
And there was no coordination. Had they coordinated, maybe you could see it. But like I said, it was self-dealing, obtaining interim money illegally, and then trying to replace the cover up. And an outside company walking away with big bucks thrown out the council.
It sounds like, from your book, it sounds like part of the problem with that was there was already some kind of bad blood, some kind of interdepartmental politics going on between Jerry Wallace, who was Hoover's point man, and Mr. Winstead, right?
Right. Apparently their management styles were different. Apparently Wallace was very abrasive when he dealt with people, according to the Prince report. And Winstead was not abrasive. He just wanted to find out the facts. So he could do his reports and his forecasts. And which leads you to believe that if Wallace doesn't want to tell him, he got something to hide, at least they should have sat down. I mean, they can at least discuss it and go over what's going on. But to not provide information, to freeze him out, to cost the guy his job. I've tried to contact Wayland and said, he's gone. That guy is gone. I mean, he doesn't answer anything. You can't trace him. You can't find. I don't know what they said to him or what they did, but he's out of there.
Wow.
And they said his position was not needed anymore. Then they created another position, called it a widget instead of whatever it was before, and hired, one of their guys. So,
sure.
I mean, that's the troubling part of all of this, is that it just seems to be like a giant scheme. People were part of the group, or they, were frozen out or told to shut up, and it went on from there.
Right.
So of course they ran out of money, and then the ISBA said no, and everything said the same.
Can you hang on with me for just a second while I do a little bit of weather that I owe the FCC right now? Okay. Sure. I always think it's kind of cool to play a little bit of music while I do the weather, so I'm going to do that. Let's see. Today we've got sunny skies, haze though, and southeast wind 6, gusting to 7. That's not much of a gust. High of 93, and